Okay, so with my last thought on that, on my last question about making predictions of what are scientists predicting so far. Remember, the volcanologists or scientists, they're saying that there's basically a calm before the storm, and they want the citizens to be prepared and know what to do. So in my notes over here, the scientists are given instructions, check it out, on how to evacuate and also what supplies are needed. Okay, so make sure you have this in your notes. This will help you. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and move on to my next page. So I'm gonna go ahead and keep reading. The earthquakes got even closer to the surface. The steam plume reached 28,000 feet, 8,500 meters, the highest so far. After conferring with VDAP scientists, Ray raised his alert to level 4, enlarging the evacuation zone for the local population. Filipinos all around the volcano packed a few possessions and walked or rode carts down the mountain. VDAP members debated, should we move to level 4? The Air Force had set VDAP's level 4 as a trigger for Clark to be evacuated. So kind of remember, everyone is looking at this volcano from their own perspective, and they're trying to decide what to do. What is best for the citizens that live close to the volcano? Evacuating 14,000 people and millions of dollars of equipment would be a huge challenge and a huge burden to the military and their families. Some VDAP members thought they should. Then the earthquakes diminished. Volcanoes don't necessarily move from deep sleep to violent eruption in a straight, orderly progression, Andy said. They ramp up and drop down, ramp up and drop down. The trend of Pinatubo was ramping higher and dropping down less. Any single episode of ramping up could lead to a full-blown eruption. But it could all just peter out to nothing. The scientists had to predict the unpredictable. The consequences, a costly false evacuation or tragic loss of life, weighed heavily on the minds and their hearts. So basically, you kind of think about this. These scientists, they are trying to weigh the pros and cons. They're trying to predict what this volcano is going to do. But think about it. With nature, can we really predict nature in a straight, orderly fashion? So these kind of questions are kind of going through my head as I'm reading this text to you. On June 8th, a chopper lifted off to give scientists a closer view of the summit. The sky cleared. They could see a big, ugly gray blob of rock that poked out of the east crater wall. It was a lava dome. Cold, hard, heavy rock could be clogging the vent. With magma moving up with nowhere to go and pressure building, the thing could blow with deadly results. The scientists told the Air Force commanders the new development and waited for them to take action. Then, the next morning, June 9th, kind of keep in mind this timeline, when Andy and his colleagues hopped into the helicopter, it took a detour to the center of the base. General Stutter and his second-in-command climbed aboard. The helicopter headed to the volcano. Instead of billowing steam and ash, only a thin snake of yellow-gray plume drifted up from the summit. Geez, that's a lot of ash, the general commented. So think about your terms here. Conferring and consequences. And if you're not sure, look at your footnotes at the bottom. So, like I said, pay attention to the timeline. So I'm going back up to the first page where it's like after. And and June 8th. And what was another date that I think it was another, then the next morning, June 9th. They are creating that timeline, telling you the sequence of events. And basically, I'm adding a note in here. The sequence of events are explaining and giving a picture of what is happening. All right. So these notes will help me understand more what is going on in this text. So I'm saving and closing. So I'm moving on to my next page. That's nothing, the volcanologist said. They pointed out how underlining the jungle all around the mountains were signs of massive ancient pyroclasmic flows. So here's a term here that has a little number next to it. Make sure you are reading your footnotes at the bottom. That's all ash from the last eruption. The helicopter turned and the widespread devastation once wrought by the volcano became impossible to miss. The general stared silently out the window as the helicopter headed back to the base. Finally, he turned to his second in command. "Do it tomorrow," he said. So kind of think about it. What did he mean by that? So remember, they're trying to decide what to do. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight this last sentence here. So the strategy was to go ahead and issue the new level warning. And also, too, they have to figure out how to evacuate all those people and all that equipment from the base. So the general, excuse me, I'm so sorry. The general and his second made the decision to evacuate and move people and equipment from the volcano. So they knew something was coming. So I'm saving and closing. I'm moving on. So kind of look at this quote here that came from the text itself. Volcanoes don't necessarily move from deep sleep into violent eruptions. I read that earlier in a straight, orderly progression. So with that, if you kind of look at this picture is kind of telling the story also. This is real. This is something that's happening. It may not be a threat now, but eventually it will become a threat. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next page. So if you look at this little red box up here, the little fun facts and the caption, I am going to let you read that part on your own because I want to go ahead and move on because I only have so much time to actually go through this particular text with you. June 10th, 1991. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. Remember the timeline. 6 a.m. Highlighting that also. Military television and radio echoed with the order to evacuate. The streets of Clark Air Base filled with cars, trucks, and buses that funneled downhill through the shanty towns and towards a naval station an hour away. By noon, 14,500 people were evacuated. So they had a plan in place to get this done. Filipinos extended their evacuation to 12 miles. 20 kilometers, displacing 25,000 people. People with carts piled high with furniture and leading water buffaloes shared the road along with the line of military trucks and cars of people evacuating the base. So if you look at this picture on the, if you look at the picture in your book, it's showing you exactly how these people are moving. Left on the base were some officers, the military police, and the engineers who could keep the lights on. The volcanologists moved their observatory to the furthest corner of the base. We were just incredibly relieved that most everybody was out of the way, Andy said. But the pressure still weighed on the scientists. It couldn't help second guessing myself, said team member Dave Harlow. All of us did. I was feeling as though the chances were pretty high that we would be hauled in front of committees investigating the disastrous evacuation. So they had to make sure they had to have this plan in place in order to understand the volcano. Its cost and impact to the Philippine economy and onto the Air Force. So they knew not just lives could have been lost here. They're thinking about the monetary side of it too. But the lives did come first. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep reading. Would Mount Pinatubo really explode? The next few days would tell. Andy woke up to a blue sky morning on June 12th. Keep that timeline. It was after 6 a.m. and the clouds had usually rolled in by then. But the sun shone brightly as he waited for geologist Rick Hoblit, who was going to give Andy a lift to the observatory. Let's go, Rick hollered from upstairs. Geez, Andy thought. What's up with him? Andy raced down the stairs, taking two at a time. Just as Andy opened the front door, a huge black ash column pumped out of the volcano, filling the sky. The column rose higher and higher. Rick and Andy jumped into their trucks and raced off. By the time they got to the observatory at the edge of the base, the ash column had hit the stratosphere. The cloud mushroomed out, reaching the sky right above them. So I'm looking at this, and something to think out loud. Make sure you look at this photograph. People with what they had coming down that mountain. And kind of think about this. This could have been a kind of a disastrous feat if the volcano was erupting before they even called the order. So kind of keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and keep reading. All right. Then the cloud slowed, stopped, and started to dissipate. Woohoo! Woo! Cool! The MPs hollered. They started doing a victory dance because they thought they just had seen the eruption and survived. But Andy and Rick didn't dance. They turned to their instruments. They knew this could be just the beginning. For the next few days, Pinatubo shot steam, rumble, and kept the scientists on edge. Several times the volcano shot up columns as big as one on June 12th. But on June 14th, the volcano stopped shooting steam and ash. So with that, they knew that this wasn't just the end. That calm before the storm, so keep that in mind. Pinatubo shook as much as it had 2 days before, but nothing came out. The volcano is all stopped up, Andy thought. He fell asleep late that night, restless and worried. Then on June 15th, Andy and other scientists were jolted from sleep by a cry. Get up, yelled the scientists on watch. Andy ran to the front door. Clouds obscured to the top of the volcano and pelting rain blurred Andy's view. But great black ash clouds, massive rolling clouds of superheated ash, raged down 6 miles, 10 kilometers on each side of the volcano. Pyroclasmic flows. Moments later, rain and wind from a typhoon that just had hit the island completely hid the erupting volcano. Andy rushed to the seismograph. The earthquake died down, way down, and stayed down. So, with this, kind of look at this illustration and caption. So, On the previous page, it showed the Filipino people coming down, and these are the people from